This video is brought to you by True Tales of Buried Treasure, the largest collection of old treasure magazines in the West. On our website, you can search for individual treasure stories by region, or buy our original magazines themselves. To pay us a visit, please click on the link in the description. Enjoy. If you're into hunting for lost treasures and delving into the intriguing mysteries that surround them, then this story is right up your alley. It's realistic in every aspect, but it falls short of being a complete account, lacking a few crucial details. Nevertheless, it holds promise and might just yield a rewarding payoff. It seems like there's a good chance that this lost and blood-stained ox train load of gold bullion is still hidden in its original location. If we assume that the boundaries of the site are reasonably well defined, even though it's in rugged terrain, then it's a pretty good bet. Over the last few years, I've been working on researching this early-day Arizona-mined load of gold ingots. Despite the odds being against me, I've managed to put together a pretty comprehensive documentation effort. However, I've always believed that there's enough information out there for the persistent treasure hunter who's not afraid to keep looking. Recently, my interest in this topic led me to explore the Alamo Creek region of New Mexico, located several miles northwest of the vibrant western cattle town of Magdalena, a historic landmark steeped in successful mining and prospecting ventures. To the south is the site of the once bustling town of Kelly, now a ghost town with only a few remaining remnants, like an old church and a miner's cemetery. I was armed with a bundle of notes and a wealth of hearsay I'd gathered since first learning about the Ox Train massacre. I embarked on this journey as a final, desperate attempt to unravel the remaining enigmatic mysteries tied to the story. I arrived in Magdalena early one morning, just as the local stockmen were starting their day. I got to chatting over coffee. These were ranchers who ran their businesses across the sparsely settled region, but they lived in town for convenience, especially for schooling. I found out that 2 or 3 cattlemen were pretty adamant about claiming the isolated country of Alamo Creek as their territory. I was keen to visit them on their home turf. I figured the folks in the Alamo region would be the best people to ask about the Gold-Laden Wagon train that met its tragic end in their area many years ago. But every time I mentioned going there, the locals in Magdalena said my vehicle wasn't suitable for the rough road conditions out there. I eventually had to take their advice and just take some pictures of the old ghost town of Kelly and the historic homes of the early cattle barons of Magdalena before I left. In Magdalena, I was told that exploring the Alamo Creek area would ideally require a 4-wheel drive vehicle or a pack train for a safer journey. Apart from the renowned Lost Adams diggings, there are lots of interesting legends surrounding the once heavily trafficked frontier road that runs through this area. One such tale is about the tragic demise of 3 Spanish priests who fell victim to a brutal Indian attack in the early days. All that remains to recount this grim event are a few cryptic markings etched by the dying missionaries onto nearby sheer stone cliffs. According to local ranchers, these telltale signs can still be seen in the vicinity today, not far from the rumored location of the hidden loot from the Gold-Laden Wagon train. The legend of lost gold along Alamo Creek has been passed down through documented accounts and narratives from the region's early settlers. The creek was a vital part of the cross-country trail favored by early travelers, mainly because it had an intermittent water supply rather than because it was easy to cross. The area is also known for its rugged cliffs and caves, which were used as hideouts by Apache warriors. This made it a prime location for attacks on unsuspecting travelers. During the Civil War, a wagon train carrying gold set out from Fort Whipple, Arizona, bound for the Denver Mint. The ore train consisted of 2 ox-drawn wagons operated by Mexicans. It followed the well-trodden trail along Alamo Creek, nestled in the foothills northwest of present-day Magdalena. After departing the confines of the creek, the trail veered eastward, intersecting with the old Spanish Camino Real, King's Highway, a major frontier thoroughfare stretching from El Paso del Norte to Albuquerque and onward to historic Santa Fe. Any train that went through the Alamo Creek region without enough protection and heavy armament could expect trouble from the Native American tribes. while the tribes that lived in the area to the north of Alamo in Pueblo settlements were more settled and peaceful. They didn't pose much of a threat to travelers. However, the Apaches, who were known for being relentless in their attacks, made the passage through Alamo dangerous. Given the small size of the ox train and the lack of guards, the gold-laden caravan was doomed from the moment it entered Alamo Creek. The harrowing Apache assault, which undoubtedly occurred at one of the region's most prominent landmarks, the old Bob McCord Ranch, is still operational in the cattle-raising business today. The most detailed account of the gold train attack comes from Agnes Morley Cleveland's book, No Life for a Lady, published in 1941 by Houghton Mifflin Company. Agnes was the daughter of William Raymond Morley, a renowned construction engineer who was responsible for routing the frontier railroad through New Mexico, including Raton Pass, south through Albuquerque and eventually into Mexico. Sadly, Morley died while working on the new railroad in the early 1880s. His widow remarried, and the family moved to the Magdalena region, settling in the Datil Mountains in February of 1886 to start a ranch. Agnes wrote about the grim fate of the gold-laden ox train during her time in this area. She describes the scene as follows: "There are always rumors of Indian attacks, and there's plenty of evidence that they've actually attacked. On my first visit to the Los Esteros Ranch, our secondary headquarters over the Datil Divide, I was taken several miles up the creek to see where the Indians killed the Mexicans, those who were with the bullion train. She says there's not much visible evidence, except for 2 small mounds of loose rock with wooden crosses on them. There are also some iron bits from the wagon scattered around. One thing that stood out was a 20-foot length of chain. It was made with irregular 6 to 10-inch hand-forged links and a large hook at one end. It was used to hitch the oxen to the wagon. There was still a hint of ash on the site, even though the massacre had happened several years ago. This is what greeted the senses. The mind's eye pictured the sudden onslaught of shouting savages emerging from the timber alongside the faint wagon tracks. They were probably marking a previous journey of the same caravan delivering provisions to the few settlers. I saw the men who were startled and defenseless, being driven off to their doom. They left behind the remnants of once human bodies and a blazing fire. Nobody saw this happen. We silently mounted our ponies and rode away." Agnes Morley Cleveland's visit to the massacre site is estimated to have occurred around 1888. The chain she mentions in her account was originally a hitching rail at the Bob McCord Ranch along Alamo Creek. It's since been relocated to the front of a mountain cabin resort on the Continental Divide, about 6 miles west of Datil. This artifact, a relic of the ill-fated wagon train, was pointed out to the writer in 1960 by the late Lorraine M. Reynolds, another daughter of Liam Raymond Morley and a sibling of the author of No Life for a Lady, shared during the interview that no one had ever found the gold that the Indians had removed and hidden before setting fire to the wagons. Despite lots of attempts, the treasure remained elusive. In a letter dated August 9, 1960, Mrs. Reynolds further explained, "The charred wagons, which left Fort Whipple, now Prescott, Arizona, on their way to the Denver Mint, were found. Human remains were found scattered on the wagons, but the gold bullion was never recovered." This backs up what we said earlier. But it seems that the gold still lies hidden in the hills or in the many caves along Alamo Creek. We can't soon forget the words of this remarkable frontier lady, excerpted from the same letter discussing the lost gold train. She wrote, "History is the narrative of human behavior. People shape history, and its diversity captivates us. During the era of the Gold Train Massacre, the area surrounding Magdalena was exceedingly remote. Indian raids persisted for years afterward, and Magdalena itself was far from peaceful. Jim McCord, an early cowhand in the area, told me during an interview that he arrived in Magdalena in 1909 and saw a violent fight that killed 9 people that night. He was looking for a place to stay and found refuge at the nearest livery stable. This fight happened in one of the village's main saloons. Bill Swingle, who was known as a chuckline rider among the ranchers in the area, spent his whole life looking for the lost bullion train along Alamo Creek. Somewhere in the 1890s, he found the chain, which was once part of the wagon equipment, Mrs. Reynolds said. But despite his efforts, the chuck line rider never managed to find the Apache treasure. If you want to get to this region, the best way is probably to take Highway 60, which goes west from Magdalena. About 14 miles after you leave that New Mexico town, you'll see a turnoff to the north on a dirt road. This leads to the ranching operations in the Alamosita Creek area. Before you get to Alamosita Creek, you'll see the headquarters of the Red Lake Ranch. The owner of this ranch lives in Magdalena and oversees cattle grazing across about 180 sections of land. Just keep going for about 3 more miles and you'll come across the site where the 3 Spanish priests met their tragic end. It's marked by 3 crosses commemorating their martyrdom. I was told that the Red Lake Ranch is about 40 miles north of Highway 60, while the Bob McCord Ranch, which is now owned by someone else, is about 3 miles further north. You can get to the area from the 40-mile point on a standard car, but beyond that, you'll need a 4-wheel vehicle. Before you go, it's a good idea to stop in Magdalena and chat with the local ranchers. They can tell you about the road conditions and give you the okay to explore on their ranch. Even if you don't find the treasure, you might learn something that will help with your research. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to read the original article or purchase the magazine from which it was taken, please check out our website, truetalesofburiedtreasure.com.